Great, thank you, John, and good morning, good afternoon to everyone out there. So glad that you all can be with us. And Bill, good morning to you as well. Good to be here with you.
Hey, good morning. Good morning, Chris.
Just to give everyone a roadmap of what we're looking to cover today, we would like to give a quick overview of the CAPER process, some of the requirements of the CAPER, talk through the data that goes into the CAPER, and especially focus on the Plan Goals and Accomplishments report, and then go through a demonstration of setting up the CAPER and the process for completing the CAPER screens. We'll talk a little bit about the CAPER and the ESG program, the ESG CAPER and the eCart tool. Give a few examples of troubleshooting common issues, and then open up the presentation for question and answer. We really want to leave as much time as we can in today's presentation for you all to be able to submit your questions and for us to answer as many questions as we can. As we're going through the process, if you do have a question, please feel free to type it into the question pod. You don't need to wait until we move to the question and answer section. We'll be organizing and gathering those questions throughout the presentation. So please feel free to ask those questions at any point in the presentation. Great. Our objectives for today's session: to describe to all of you the process for using the Plan Goals and Accomplishments MicroStrategy report, to understand the data that is going into the CAPER and how you can use that data to produce a sound and robust CAPER. I'd like to talk through with everyone the process of completing the CAPER setup correctly and going through the submission process in IDIS, and then go through the troubleshooting of common issues as well as in your Q&A of identifying common issues and describing how to address them. Before moving into the presentation, we'd love to just get a sense of what your IDIS functions are and your role that you play in setting up both the action plan and the CAPER. So TJ, if we could pull up poll question number 3. Would like to know which of the following IDIS functions that you are involved in. Do you develop the annual action plan? Do you develop the CAPER? Do you develop both the action plan and the CAPER, or you don't do either the action plan or the CAPER? And we'll give you all just 10 more seconds or so to answer. Great. It looks like the vast majority of you out there are involved in developing both the action plan and the CAPER. Great. I think a lot of what we'll be talking about today very much relates to how you should be setting up and operating within your action plan and how that translates into the CAPER. Just to make sure we're all on the same page in talking about the CAPER, I want to establish just a couple of the basics of what is required in the CAPER and what is the purpose of the CAPER. The goal of the CAPER is to report and assess the progress made toward achieving your 5-year and 1-year strategic plan goals. The CAPER is your opportunity to share with your community, to share with your elected officials, to share with your stakeholders, and to share with HUD what you've accomplished over the past year and over the past 5-year period. The CAPER is due 90 days after the end of your program year, and CAPERs must be entered and submitted in IDIS, with the caveat, and this is for some of you all who responded that you would be putting your first action plan in IDIS in 2016, as long as you have a paper action plan, that CAPER is still a paper-based CAPER, except for the ESG requirement. But once your action plan is in IDIS, your CAPER is also in IDIS. And one other very important caveat is for members of a consortia. All consortia grantees, lead grantees, or participating grantees are responsible for creating, completing, and submitting their own CAPER in IDIS. Unlike setting up the con plan or setting up the action plan for a participating grantee where that responsibility falls on the lead grantee, the responsibility for setting up and completing the CAPER is the responsibility of each consortia grantee. Before creating the CAPER in IDIS, at the end of your program year, a couple of steps that you want to make sure that you do, and we'll talk these through in more detail in this presentation. You want to ensure that all amendments to any action plans or to your action plan is entered in IDIS and marked as review completed. The CAPER will automatically associate itself with the most recently approved action plan in IDIS at the point of creation. If you have an amendment that has not been submitted to HUD or has been submitted to HUD but has not been marked as review complete, your CAPER will not associate with that action plan. Therefore, it's critical before setting up your CAPER in IDIS that you check your action plan and confirm that your action plan is marked as review completed. Second, you want to ensure that all of your activity accomplishment data is entered in the IDIS. Your CAPER will automatically be pulling all of that accomplishment data that you've entered for the program year and populating your accomplishments report. And again, it will pull that data at the point that the CAPER is created. So before creating the CAPER, you want to make sure that all of that accomplishment data is entered for each of your IDIS activities. As a way to check that, and Bill will talk about this in a minute, is to run the Con-Plan Goals and Accomplishments report. This allows you to view the accomplishments that have been entered in IDIS and what will be associated with your CAPER. And you can do this as a check before actually creating your CAPER to make sure that the accomplishment data looks correct and is entered in IDIS. And with that, Bill, I will turn it over to you to talk about the CAPER data and to talk about the Con-Plan Goals and Accomplishments report.
Thanks, Chris. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bill Kubel, and I've met probably a lot of you, but we're here today to, I'm going to talk about the CAPER sources of data. And as you can see on the slide, there's three main sources to the CAPER data. Number one is that action plan. So as Chris mentioned, you need to make sure that the plan is submitted and reviewed complete in the system, because when you run your CAPER, it's going to look at the most recently approved action plan, and it's going to base the information it pulls from the action plan on the most recently approved action plan. So if you, and based on the poll, a lot of you actually do the action plan, so if you're familiar with it, there is a goal screen in the action plan. It's AP20, and the goals are coming directly from that screen. So when you look at your CAPER, and Chris will show you a couple examples, if you're wondering where those plan numbers come from, that's exactly where it comes from. It comes from AP20. Whenever I'm doing a CAPER, I usually like to go back to that action plan, and there's a neat little summary you can print out. I think it's like the AP23 screen. There's just a button at the bottom that says, you know, print summary or display summary, and that way you can see all the goals. You can see the different descriptions, and I think it's just a good way to kind of verify what you guys said in the action plan, and it kind of will allow you to verify the information in the CAPER. The second part there is basically the data that you're entering at the activity level throughout the year into IDIS. Now, there's a couple of different ways to pull that information. You can, of course, just go into the IDIS screens and the accomplishment screens. You can, for the home, you can use that search home activity screen, and that's a good way. You can run basically anything that was completed within the program year in question should be showing up. A couple other helpful reports are the BOSMAC, the PR03 for CDBG. I know some people have used the PR23, that's the Summary of Accomplishments report in the past, but I've run into a couple glitches with that one, so you might want to take note of that. The PR23 is not working exact and perfectly, shall we say. But the report we're here to talk about really is the one called the Con-Plan Goals and Accomplishments Report. And what that's going to do is it's going to summarize all the information that should be showing up in the CAPER. And it's just a micro-strategy report, so you can go in there and run it at any time throughout the program year, as long as you have an action plan submitted, and see where you're at. So it's not only a report that can be helpful at the end of the year when you're doing your CAPER, but throughout the year to see where you're doing in terms of progress. So, and one more third, we're going to get into that report a lot in the next couple slides, but the third part is the HMIS, and this is kind of new for this year. It's a new requirement. So for all of you ESG grantees out there, there is a screen within the CAPER template called the CR65, and that is basically, you don't need to use that anymore. That's going to be replaced with HMIS data that's going to be summarized in the eCart tool. The eCart is an Excel spreadsheet that basically imports all of these data extracts you get from the HMIS system, and we'll touch on that. And you'll basically upload a copy of that eCart spreadsheet as an attachment to your CAPER. And it gives you a lot of good detail, and it gives HUD a lot of good detail about not only just the number of people who are served, but a lot of the good details and data points that are captured by HMIS. So that's a third source of the CAPER data. So Chris, why don't we move on to the next slide? And we will start talking about the Con-Plan Goals and Accomplishments report. All right. So this is a micro-strategy report. If you're familiar with running reports out of IDIS, it's just going to be one of those reports listed on the in the shared reports folder, and you run it just like any other report. The only real difference with this report is, again, you have to have an approved action plan submitted in the system, and everybody on this call at this point should probably have one of those, so that shouldn't be a big deal. What the report is it basically lists all of your accomplishment data by the goal it was associated with, and we'll pull up a copy and give you a visual reference here. And it's basically broken into three sections. Hopefully, most of your information is captured in the first section, because those are the accomplishments where the system will automatically assign it to a specific goal, and basically your work is done. You just have to go in and verify that the information is correct, but you won't have to manually edit any information in the CAPER. If it's showing up in the first section, that means you're good. The second and third sections are accomplishments that were reported in the system, but for one reason or another, the system cannot basically tie that back to a specific goal. So why don't we go ahead and take a look at that report, Chris. There we go. And so can you zoom in just maybe a little bit? Thank you, sir. So like I said, the report is run, and it's summarized into three different sections. And in big bold letters at the top, you can see it says accomplishments associated with a single strategic plan goal. So what it does is, over on the left, it actually lists out the three different goals. In this case, the grantee had 3 overarching goals, and you can see them numbered 1, 2, 3. Give you funding amount, and then for each goal, you're going to have one or more outcome indicator. So, for example, in this first goal for infrastructure and public improvements, they had 2 goal outcome indicators. One, the number of persons assisted by a public facility or infrastructure, and number 2, homeowner housing rehabs. And you know, it looks like they zeroed that out, and that makes sense because that probably should be under the housing and development. So you can see there's zeros for that that second one. But just keeping going from left to right, we have the outcome unit of measure, which in that first one, for example, is persons assisted. But you can see you'll be measuring different things. And again, if you have experience with your action plan, you set these goals. You should be somewhat familiar with them. And then we have 2 columns for the strategic plan, which is that 3 to 5 year period, the period of your con plan, not just the program you're in question, but basically the con plan to date. So you have the expected and the actual. And you can see there that the system is calculating, again, based on the accomplishments entered at the activity level, it's going ahead and automatically assigning those actual accomplishments to a specific goal. Now, again, it depends on each program has slightly different ways to do this. So for the CDBG, well, let me start at the beginning though. So for each IDIS activity is assigned to a project, right? And each one of those projects, if it was included in an action plan that you submitted through IDIS, each project should be associated with at least one strategic plan goal. So that's how it kind of makes the bridge from the activity to the strategic plan goal, is through the project. Now, all of the projects that were assigned to a single strategic plan goal, those are the ones that are being summarized in this first section. Now, there are some projects where you assigned it to more than one strategic plan goal. So let's say there's an old dilapidated building in the middle of your downtown, and you're going to knock it down, and that's helping maybe with a goal you set up as removing slums and blight. And then you're also going to rebuild a new apartment complex there, and that's going to help with your goal of affordable housing. In that case, you might have just very obviously, when you set up your project, assigned it to both of those goals, since it's going to fall into those categories. That's all well and good. However, you're going to run into a little confusion here when you come to the CAPER, because HUD wants you to assign it to a single strategic plan goal so you don't end up double counting those accomplishments. So just real quick, Chris, if you can scroll back down to the second section. In that example, if I had assigned that project in the action plan to more than one strategic plan goal, that's where it's going to show up in this second section. And it looks like this particular grantee did a good job, as they only associated each project with one goal. And if that happens, then all of your accomplishments will be in that in the first section, and none of them will be in this second section. So when you're doing your next action plan, if you do see a lot of projects listed in the second section, and this is just a piece of advice. It's obviously not a requirement. It just means more manual adjustments come CAPER time. But if you don't want to mess with that and have to manually come back and do that, just choose the one goal that your project is, for the most part, mainly addressing, and then choose that one goal, and then you won't have to make any manual adjustments. So I hope that makes sense. If not, please, and I see there are a lot of questions out there, so just go ahead and pop your question into the question box, and we can discuss it in more detail. All right, just a few more points. Chris, if you can scroll back up to the top. So I did want to point out there are a couple program differences in when your accomplishments are counted. For your home activities, those funded with the home dollars, if the activity is marked as complete and it has a completion date within the program year in question, it should show up as an accomplishment, as an actual, on this report. So again, we had the 2 columns for the strategic plan as a whole and the % complete, and then we have 2 columns for the program year in question, those, and then % complete all the way to the right. So that's for home. For CDBG, if you're familiar with reporting accomplishments for CDBG, you'll know that when you report your accomplishments, you assign the very first thing on that accomplishment page is you put in a program year in which to count those accomplishments. So in my case, I did a street improvement activity, and I signed, when I reported my accomplishments, I put in 2015 as my accomplishment year. That means those will count on my 2015 CAPER. All right, so if you have any questions, again, please get them in. But if you have your project set up with a single goal and you're reporting your accomplishments at the activity level, hopefully most of your information will be in this first top section. All right, going down to the second section, we already talked about. So let's get past the second section and get down to the third section. Chris, you're doing a heck of a job jumping around and helping me out here. All right, so there's the third section, and you'll see that this section is titled Accomplishments Not Associated with a Strategic Plan Goal. Now, typically, what you're going to see here are activities that realized accomplishments in the program year, but chances are they're from a prior program year. In which that their project was not associated with the strategic plan goal. So this whole connection between the strategic plan goal and the projects really only started happening when you were reporting your action plans in IDIS. So as we all know, especially with home projects and some CDBG infrastructure and big capital development projects, you know, I might have funded it in 2011 or 2012, and the project's not going to come online or be complete until this year. Maybe it's going to take 3 years. Maybe it's going to take 4 years. So what you have here is a list of activities that, again, chances are from prior years, but they actually came online and were accomplished or completed in the given program year. Now, what Chris is going to talk about is basically how to take this information and report it back into the CAPER. And what you'll see is in that CAPER template, you will have the ability to go in and edit and change the information that the system populated for you. So if you had a big rental development, so to speak, you know, come online this year, and you want to, because you want to get accomplishments, you want to get credit for those units, you might go ahead and bump up and make that adjustment in the CAPER template. So again, I really encourage you to run this report before you run your CAPER. Give yourself a chance to just kind of see what is being captured by the system and what's not. If you don't see a lot of accomplishments showing up on this report, it may make sense to go into IDIS at the activity level and again report your accomplishments for those home activities, complete those that need to be completed for CDBG, report accomplishments in the correct accomplishment year, and make sure all of that is in the system before running the CAPER template in IDIS. All right, so I think that's it for the Comp Plan Goals and Accomplishments report, and I'm going to pass it back to Chris, who's going to walk us through the steps of actually doing that and setting up the CAPER in IDIS. Chris?
Great. Thank you, Bill. And just to reiterate, this report is downloaded from the Reports tab in IDIS. It's called the Con Plan Goals and Accomplishments Report. It doesn't have a PR number like most of the other reports in IDIS, but you can access it from the Reports tab. It's called the Con Plan Goals and Accomplishments Report. One of the resources that we post on the HUD Exchange after this webinar, one of those resources will be a short e-tutorial video walking through what Bill just described with this report and also demonstrating how to access and how to download this report. And before talking about setting up the CAPER, we'd just like to know a little bit more information about all of you. TJ, if we could open up poll question number 4. I would like to know if you use a schedule or if you have a schedule or a timeline for developing your CAPER. And we'll give everyone about 10 more seconds. Looks like some of you are still responding. Great. So the vast majority of you do use a schedule or a timeline in developing your CAPER. For those of you who don't, strongly encourage you doing it. And for those of you who do, would make sure to include steps such as adding and downloading and reviewing the eCon plan goals and accomplishments report, and checking and confirming that your data, your activity accomplishment is uploaded, your amendments have been submitted and approved onto that timeline. And adding all of those steps into your timeline will make your CAPER process go more smoothly. So we've talked about the data, we've talked about the report. We're now ready to talk about actually setting up the CAPER. And we'll go into IDIS and we'll do a live demonstration of this. But just as a reminder, all grantees, including consortia participating members, are responsible for setting up and completing and submitting their own CAPER in IDIS. So I'm going to open up IDIS. And first thing in adding your CAPER and setting up your CAPER is you need to make sure that you have access to add a CAPER in IDIS. If you don't see this CAPER submenu here under the Plans, Projects, and Activities tab, check with your local IDIS administrator to make sure that you have access to add or to edit a CAPER. In adding a CAPER, it is a very straightforward process. You just need to enter your program year, the title for your CAPER, and the version for your CAPER. As I said at the beginning of this webinar, IDIS will automatically associate your CAPER with the most recently approved action plan for that program year. So you do need to make sure that those amendments have been submitted and have been marked as review complete in IDIS. Once you complete this information, it will automatically create a CAPER for you. And I'm going to come over here to the search as I created one earlier, and I will just open that up.
Chris, we had a request if you could just maximize or zoom in a little bit on your screen so we can see the text a little bit better.
Sure.
Thank you.
There we go.
Much better.
Okay. We will come into the test version that we created earlier for this. And as you'll see, the setup looks very similar to your comp plan or to your action plan setup in the search functionality. And open up and you'll see these are the CAPER screens. These are the requirements for completing the CAPER. And you'll see each screen is associated with the corresponding reg. So just like completing your consolidated plan, just like completing your action plan, if you have a question of what you need to be reporting on in your CAPER, you have the regs listed right there. You can go in, you can check and confirm, what am I supposed to be reporting? What are the requirements that I need to include in my report? And we'll just open up a couple of these screens, and we'll open up the goals and outcomes screen. And again, you see the regs listed right at the top of the screen. And what we see is a table very similar to the IDIS report that Bill was just discussing. There are two tables in the Goals and Accomplishments report, one that focuses on your accomplishments for the program year, and a second table that focuses on your accomplishments for the strategic plan period. And you'll see, you're seeing the same set of what are the expected numbers and what are the actual numbers that you achieved in your accomplishments. Now, one thing that's very important to note on this is all of the data fields, the actual fields in the CAPER are editable. HUD understood when designing the CAPER template that you may be entering accomplishment data a little bit later, or you may not, all that data may not carry over from the projects and the activities. What you're able to do is you can manually adjust and manually edit those actual numbers to reflect your full accomplishment information if what is showing up on the CAPER template is different than what you're seeing in any of your IDIS reports, or is different than what you've been tracking for your activity accomplishment information. So do know that if you are seeing and you know that those numbers are off, you are able to make those edits on the screen. Okay, coming back to the main menu. And I do think it is just important to note on the Con Plan Goals and Accomplishments report, you can run that report at any point during the program year, and it will give you a report of status to date on the action plan that you're identifying and on the program year that you're identifying to be used, or to be the year in the action plan for that report. Stepping back, we'll be talking about the ESG screens in just a minute, but I also just want to point out a few elements of the administration screen. You'll notice here that you have the opportunity to upload more attachments than you do in the consolidated plan or in the action plan admin screen. As Bill will talk about, this is where you will upload eCart information for reporting on your ESG accomplishments. This is also where you can upload maps, complementary data, comments from a community meeting, and any other attachments that you would like to include. You may be including additional reports from IDIS that you would like to attach to your CAPER. All of those attachments can be uploaded here, and you have five attachments to include that information. Bill, before starting on the CAPER and the ESG requirements, any other broad comments you have on the CAPER template in IDIS?
Well, you were just on the screen. That's a good segue. That screen that you were just on, the CR00, the administration screen, this is where you're actually going to load up your eCarts document. Yeah, right where Chris has his cursor under those attachments. You'll use one of those 5 slots to load up the eCarts information. So that was a good segue, Chris. But no, otherwise, I think you hit all the bases on the CAPER template. The same data entry rules, one other point, just the same data entry rules do apply for the CAPER template as they do for the consolidated plan and the action plan. Text boxes can include up to 4,000 characters in each text box. Additional content can be uploaded to the attachments, and there are a couple of places, not quite as many,
in the CAPER template where you have the option of adding additional text boxes to the screens. And Bill, before segueing over to you, would just like to pull up poll question number 5. For ESG grantees, is your HMIS system ready to generate the ESG CAPER report? And so if we can open that up. And it looks like just about 60% of you have your HMIS system ready to generate the report, and about 40% of you don't. And so Bill will talk through that process and talk through the ESG requirements for the CAPER.
Thanks, Chris. If we can flip back to the slide, I believe we're on slide maybe 16. And just a reminder, folks, it does look like a few of you have your hands raised. In terms of questions, we're not going to be calling on anybody with their hands raised. If you do have a question, there's the question box. So please submit your written questions via the question box. It should be one of those the panels in the GoToWebinar dialog box. I also had one clarification. Beth pointed out that you can run the CON-Plan goals and accomplishments report at any point. That is true, but you need to be able to choose your action plan when you run that report, which one it's associated with. So, you know, there's a couple dummy ones in there, but the one you want to choose is the one you've actually submitted. Otherwise, the goals may not make any sense. And finally, I had one more reminder. A common question that we've gotten throughout was, is there a PR number like PR01, PR02 for that CON-Plan goals and accomplishments report? And no, and in fact, this is kind of a special report. It does not have a PR number, but if you go in that shared reports folder under MicroStrategy, it's going to be the very first one in the top left corner, so it should be fairly easy to find. All right, so moving on to the CAPER and ESG, a new requirement for 2015 is the inclusion of eCarts. So eCarts is E-C-A-R-T. We're not going to get into a great level of detail about eCarts, but we do want to remind you that it is a requirement for 2015. And essentially what the eCarts tool does, again, is it's an Excel spreadsheet that's going to import some data extracts from your HMIS system and basically pool all of that information together for all of your ESG awards and essentially recreate some of the tables that were included in eCart or in the CAPER, so you don't have to manually do that yourself. But again, beyond that, it's going to provide a lot of other data indicators that's captured by HMIS. And so you can use it as a tool to review your grantee's performance or your subrecipient's performance, the overall grantee performance, and I think it's a really good thing. I actually helped a grantee go through it, and it's really amazing the level of details you're going to get. So just going to the slide here, you're going to be required to complete CR60, CR70, and CR75. Those are still ESG-specific screens that you need to complete. What eCart is going to replace is CR65. So that was kind of a lot of the goals and basically the number of persons served by each component of ESG. So you're still going to have to do some work in the CAPER template on 60, 70, and 75, but 65 you can now leave blank. For guidance on how to use the eCart, there is a webinar out there, and there's also really good directions, folks. And you know, I walked through this myself, like I said, just a couple days ago, and the directions that are up on the web and also embedded. So if you open up the eCarts, the first tab will walk you through step by step on how to use eCarts and the process that you need to follow. The one thing, and this gets back to Chris's point about having your HMIS system ready to go, and also giving yourself lots of lead time to get this information in there. It doesn't take too long to actually import the data into eCarts itself. You don't even need a whole day. I was working with a state, and they had over 50. I think they had like 70 different subrecipients, and it really did not take that much time to get the data in there. But what you'll find is if you load the data up for a certain subrecipient and they have some data errors, I believe the threshold is 25% for any of the specific questions. If they have errors, what you're going to have to do is go back to that subrecipient and work with them to correct those errors, and that may take some time. So again, don't wait till the last minute for this. If you haven't done so already, you reach out to your HMIS lead entity. Make sure that the system is ready and able to generate the eCarts data extracts, and run this. Give yourself some time to allow for any data corrections that may be necessary. The other question, there was a question that came up, and I'm just going to address it now since we're here, and that related to the domestic violence, the violence or the victim service providers who may not be using HMIS. They are required to use a comparable system, so those may have issues as well. So there are some alternatives for them, but again, you'll want to give yourself some time and make sure that they're able to generate the type and level of data that the eCart system is providing. And we do have some HUD experts online too if we have any more very specific questions about that. Okay, can we go to the next slide? All right, so if you do have additional very specific questions about the ESG portion or the eCarts, please submit those questions to the Ask a Question on the HUD Exchange, and you'll be able to get some specific answers there. If you don't feel that you will be able to meet the requirement and basically get the eCart information uploaded as part of your CAPER, whether it's the HMIS system is just not ready, or maybe you have some subrecipients whose data quality isn't that great, go ahead and contact your local field office. And also Marlissa Grogan, and her email is provided in the slide right there at headquarters, and just give them a heads up. And what you'll want to do is, basically develop a timeline in order to get that eCart information together. So they know it's a new requirement, and they're willing to work with you, but just give them a heads up. And it is requirements now, so we're going to have to work to get that information into the required format. Chris, I'm going to pass it back to you to take the lead on troubleshooting.
Great. And before we talk about troubleshooting common issues, we'd like to just do a couple of more fact checks. TJ, if we could pull up poll question number 6. And asking here, when should the CAPER be added in IDIS? After the end of your program year to correctly associate activity accomplishments, after entering all activity accomplishment data for the program year, after completing and submitting any annual action plan amendments, or all of the above. We'll give everyone a little bit more time there to respond. Still waiting on some of you, and don't want to start calling out names of who we're waiting on. Great. So 90% of you said D, all of the above. And that is absolutely correct. You want to wait until the end of the program year to make sure that all of your activity accomplishment data can be entered into the system. You want to make sure that all of that data is actually entered through the activities. And you also want to make sure that any amendments that you have submitted have been marked as review complete in IDIS for your annual action plan. And one more poll question for members of consortia, poll question number 7. In a consortium, who should create the CAPER in IDIS? Is it the responsibility of the lead entity, each consortium member, or you're not a member of a consortium? Okay, and we'll give this another 10 seconds or so, still waiting on a few of you. Okay, so 40% of you said that it was the responsibility of each consortium member, 20% said it was the lead entity, and another 40% of you indicated that you were not a member of a consortium. I just want to reiterate option number 2, each consortium member is the correct answer. Every consortium member who is filling out an SF-424 and receiving funds from HUD is responsible for setting up, completing, and submitting their CAPER in IDIS. That is different than setting up and submitting the consolidated plan. That is different than setting up and submitting the action plan. It is the responsibility of each participating member who is receiving CDBG or other CPD funds to set up and complete their own CAPER. Okay. We'll move on to a couple of common issues that we see in the AAQ before opening it up to questions in a couple of minutes. Issue number 1, accomplishment data includes accomplishments that are not associated with a goal. And this may be due to accomplishments being realized from a prior year and or activities being associated with a matrix code that's differing from the goal outcome indicator. To correct this, to line up that accomplishment data in that CR05 screen, you can manually adjust the accomplishment information on that screen based on the MicroStrategy report that Bill was talking about, based on other reporting or recording systems that you use, or other reports that you're downloading from IDIS. Bill, anything you'd like to add on this issue?
Yeah, so I mean, if you have a project that wasn't associated with a goal in your action plan, if you're running that quality check before you submit your action plan, it should catch that error. Otherwise, I can't think of a reason why a project would not be associated with a goal. Again, run that quality check before you submit your action plan, and that it will make sure that each one of your projects is associated with a goal, and then it will put it up there at the top. The other thing I'd like to point out there is, as we get through a couple more of these CAPERs and basically all of your activities are covered under an action plan that has been submitted via IDIS, this should become less and less of an issue because, after we go through this cycle a couple times, hopefully all of your accomplishments will be associated with the comp plan goal, and it will become less of an issue.
Great. And next issue, not all accomplishment data is appearing in the CAPER. And this is likely because the CAPER was created before the accomplishment data was entered into the activity screen. Again, to reiterate, of including in your timeline, making sure that all of your activity data is entered in IDIS prior to creating your CAPER. If you're seeing some variations, you can run the Plan Goals and Accomplishments report, and that report will stay current with what is being entered as accomplishments for your activities. So if you created your CAPER last month, accomplishment data was entered after that, you can run the Plan Goals and Accomplishments report and see that updated information. Bill, anything you would like to add?
Yeah, just on the for the ESG and the HOPWA grantees, HOPWA just came out with an announcement not too long ago that you no longer have to enter accomplishment data into IDIS. And as we just discussed with ESG, ESG is you're not entering the data directly into IDIS, it's coming from HMIS. So on those two programs for ESG and HOPWA, you will have to manually add the data to the CAPER template. But that's it.
Great. Well, that concludes the presentation portion, and we're now going to move to questions that you all have been submitting, and we'll respond to as many questions as we can. We'll be responding to all of the questions verbally. If we're not able to get to your question, please submit them to the HUD Exchange Ask a Question, and you'll be able to get a response to your question through the AAQ portal. And Bill, we've had a number of follow-up questions on the eCart tool, and wondering if you could just go over one more time how to submit that eCart tool. Are you able to upload the Excel document directly to the CAPER template, or are there any steps that you need to take in uploading that?
Yeah, that's a great point, Chris. So the CAPER in IDIS, it's not going to accept an Excel. It's not going to accept an Excel attachment. So what you're going to have to do, and again, the directions are very explicit, and they do a good job of stepping you through how to do this, is what you're going to do is you're actually going to open up a new Word document, just a blank Word document, and you're going to insert the Excel file as an object into that Word template. So it's not very straightforward, but it's a great workaround, because what you'll be able to do is save that Word document and then upload the Word document, again with the Excel file attached as an attachment to that CAPER. So at this point, where you're at the screen you're at right now, where it says attachment 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you hit Browse to Attach, and at that point you're going to select the Word document that has the Excel eCart tool embedded as an object. So again, I don't know, we could do a quick screen demonstration. I know we have a lot of questions though, so I don't know if we want to take the time to do that. But please, folks, if you have any questions, look at the eCart tool itself. It has really good directions on how to do that. And there's also that webinar back from October of last year that does a really good detailed job of explaining the steps to submit the eCarts as part of your CAPER.
Right, and just to reiterate what was said earlier, we will make sure to include all of those resources on this webinar page after the delivery of this webinar, so everyone can access those many different resources on the CAPER that are out there, both for the ESG requirements as well as other elements. Another common question that's coming in, are there any additional reports, any additional elements that need to be included or uploaded as part of the CAPER, any MicroStrategy reports? entitlement grantees still need to submit their PR-26, and state grantees still need to submit their PER along with the CAPER. And again, those reports and any other reports that you would like to include can be attached here through the attachments, and those can be saved as a PDF and uploaded and submitted as part of your CAPER. There may be other reports as well that you would like to include that help tell your story, and by all means, you can upload those as well. One other question that's just been coming in quite a bit, and while we're here on this admin screen, is there a quality check function for the CAPER similar to that of the con plan and the action plan? You'll see there is not a quality check here on the admin screen. What you do have, as I referenced earlier, is the associated reg with each CAPER screen, and you can make sure that you're responding to that corresponding element of the regulation. Any other guidance, Bill, that you have on cross-checking to make sure that a CAPER is complete and thorough?
No. So the way the CAPER was structured in the system was to comply with all the reg citations, as you mentioned. Now, some of you you're on really good terms with your HUD reps, hopefully. Just check with them and make sure that there's nothing that they want to see. Sometimes they want to see some other specific IDIS report, and they're the ones reviewing the report, so just try to make them happy in terms of getting it all into the template. So I would work closely with your HUD reps and just make sure that, see if there's any additional information they would like to include, or they would like to see included in your CAPER template on top of what's in the regs.
Great. And one other comment, just building off of that, Bill, and a couple of questions on this have come in as well, is you are able to change the status to open in progress field office review. And what that means is that you're able to continue to edit, continue to work on your CAPER, and at the same time, your field office rep is able to come in and view your CAPER. So if you have a question on how you're reporting out on other elements, if you have a question on a certain screen or want input on a certain way that you've responded to something in your CAPER, you can just turn your status to open in progress field office review, and your rep will be able to come in and view and provide feedback to you on your CAPER while you're continuing to work on it. See. A couple of questions have come in asking about downloading a Word document of the CAPER. And similar to the Consolidated plan and the action plan, you're able to download the CAPER as a Word document using this download as Word document tool. There are several issues with the downloaded copy where some of the information may not fully populate in the Word document, and the HUD eCon Planning Suite Troubleshooting Guide provides walk-around strategies and troubleshooting tips for any of those downloading issues. And so do just make sure to review and use that troubleshooting guide in all elements of the eCon Planning Suite, but especially in downloading the CAPER template. Okay, and coming back to questions. Let's see, Bill, have a question for you here. If you have an open ongoing project from a prior year Will that data feed into your current year CAPER even though it wasn't tied to your strategic plan?
That's a great question. So if you have and it depends on which type of program you're working with. So for home, if it's completed within that program year, it will show up on that dashboard report, probably in that third section. If it's not completed, if it's still listed as open, it shouldn't show up on that report at all. On the other hand, for a CDBG program, you can report accomplishments for open activities, and if you report the accomplishments on that program year screen, on the accomplishments year screen, those should in fact show up. And again, if they're not tied to a specific goal because they weren't set up in the action plan via IDIS, they're going to show up on that third section of the report. And so you might want to add a little narrative. I mean, especially if it's just, let's say it's way overshooting your goal. You reported a goal of 10 and you ended up, reporting 100 units. You'll want to use that narrative in the CAPER to describe what happened and say, well, we're reporting 100 units as reported because this is coming from a prior year.
Great, thank you, Bill. And Marlisa, I have a question for you on downloading data for the ESG CAPER. Grantees having issues with comparable database users being able to produce CSV files that will work with the generation tool. Can you provide any guidance on how to deal with comparable database users?
Hi, everyone. Sure. I'm really glad that the requester asked that question because I think we're finding that it's a pretty common problem for subrecipients who are using comparable databases. So the best thing to do is to contact both your field office, your CPD rep at the field office, and me. We're finding that there are a wide variety of situations for subs using comparable databases. Some don't have software that can generate a CSV export, and others are close, but they're just dealing with glitches. So the best thing to do would be to contact us, and then we can work through your specific issue and then look at options as well as developing a timeline for your subrecipients to be able to come into compliance with the eCart requirements.
Great. Thank you for that. Bill, another question for you. Do you have any recommendations on the order in which a grantee completes the CAPER screen?
That's a really good question. I don't think so. I think usually when I'm helping a grantee, we will, we'll take a first cut at each screen. And it's kind of a iterative process. You go through and you answer what you can. You identify things you still have to, go back to the files and pull out, or maybe you have to talk with somebody else from another department, and you go ahead and flag those. So I don't think it's necessary to go through in any specific order. So I know there was one question about can I run a Word document version of the report? And you do, if you look on Chris's screen right now, you see you do have that option of downloading as a Word document. So I think one of the questions was, can I just go ahead and print that out? And sure, you can go ahead and create a test CAPER at the beginning before you have all your accomplishments entered or before you have any narrative entered, and see what it's going to look like before you that might help you prepare. Sure, that's one way to do it. But no, to get back to the question, there's not any specific order you need to go in terms of completing the screens.
Great. Thank you, Bill. Next question is asking for clarification on the CAPER being associated with the most recently approved action plan. By the time the CAPER is started, the grantee will have submitted and hopefully have approved the 2016 action plan. Therefore, will our 2015 CAPER accidentally be associated with the 2016 action plan? That's a great question. I just want to come back here to where you're adding the CAPER, and you'll see one of the three fields of adding the CAPER is the program year. So the system will not necessarily associate with the most recent CAPER that is in all of IDIS. What it will be associating with is the most recent, or excuse me, it will not be associating with the most recent action plan in IDIS, but what it will be associating is with the most action plan from that program year that you've identified here in this field. So if you type in 2015 there, it will associate with the most recent 2015 action plan. It will not associate itself with the 2016 action plan. Great clarifying question. Bill, a question for you here. A grantee just completed their first CAPER in IDIS and found that a number of the projects were associated with multiple goals. The grantee would like to adjust this for the remaining years of the action plan and is asking what the process would be in revising future action plans to ensure that those projects are only associated with one goal.
Yeah, that's a good question, and so as we talked about in the presentation, if a project is associated with more than one goal, that just means you'll have to manually assign those accomplishments to a specific goal. It may be a little too late to do that for the current action plan, and it sounds like you've already submitted your CAPER. But in future action plans, I don't think you have to do anything to go back to those old projects, but you're going to be setting up new projects in the new action plan. So just make sure that when you set up your new projects in the next action plan, you go back and you just assign that project to a single strategic plan goal. What it's going to do is on the project screens, it will list all your goals, and all you do is put a check box next to which goal it's going to meet. So just make sure you find the one that it best suits, even though, again, it may in reality address 2 or even more, 3 or 4 different goals. Choose the one that it most closely is associated with, and choose that one, and that will be your solution there. Now, you may have already submitted your next year's action plan. If that's the case and you want to amend it, the steps in the manual on how to amend your plan, and part of that amendment could be going back and just assigning it to a single goal. So that would be the way to go forward there.
Great. Thank you, Bill. Next question. If you modify any of the actual numbers on the CR05 screen, will those modifications to the actuals migrate to the report? And the answer to that is no. Any edits that you're making on the CR05 screen are just contained to the CR05 screen. The data that is populating the con plan goals and accomplishments report, that is pulling from your activity accomplishment information. And that information is also populating the CR05 screen, but of course it's populating at the CR05 screen at the point when the CAPER is created. If you do continue to add accomplishment information, the con plan goals and accomplishments report will continue to update with that new accomplishment information. Bill, anything that you would like to add to that?
No, that's right on.
Great. Bill, do you have any troubleshooting tips or suggestions on how to cross-check or confirm why the comp plan goals and accomplishments report may not be associating with all of the projects or activities in IDIS and associated with your program year. Any recommendations on how to deal with that?
So the question is, they're just not showing up on the ConPlan dashboard report, or they're showing up in the wrong sections, perhaps?
Right, probably both.
Okay. So again, the kind of the linchpin between the goal and the accomplishments at the activity level is really the project. So chances are either the project was not associated with the correct goal as part of the action plan, or perhaps the accomplishments are from an older year action plan that was not submitted via IDIS. And then the other piece would be what I think Chris brought up in one of the trouble slides, is that it has an unexpected matrix code, and the matrix code wasn't really tied to the goal outcome indicator that was selected on the annual action plan. So, I mean, basically all of your accomplishments should be showing up somewhere on that ConPlan dashboard report. So if they're not in the first section, they should be showing up in the second or third section. If they're not showing up at all, chances are the accomplishments aren't either in the system. So for home, again, the activity has to be marked as complete in that program year in order to show up in that report. And for CDBG, the accomplishments have to be reported under the accomplishment detail screen with that program year field. That very first field you see on the accomplishment detail screen, it has to be the same program year. If you're reporting under an older program year because it's from an older action plan, you're not going to get credit in that new year for those accomplishments. So there's a couple different places to look. Again, just in summary, if they're showing up in the wrong place on that report, chances are it's something to do with the project. Either the project's not associated with the right goal, or maybe it's associated with more than one goal. And if it's not showing up at all on that report, chances are the data is not correctly entered at the activity level. So hopefully that clarifies some things.
Great. Thank you, Bill, for that guidance. One question asking about public comment period and the eCart tool, asking if you're able to just print off the eCart report and include it as an attachment to your CAPER for the public comment period. Absolutely, you're able to download and print the eCart report and include that as an attachment, or embed that into your ESG CAPER section to be able to share all of that information as part of the public comment process.
Yeah, you might not want to print out in its entirety, but there are some basic screens. Especially there's a summary screen with a summary of all the data that could easily be printed out. Part of the eCarts tool is basically a list of all the raw data, which is like a really, really wide table. And you probably wouldn't want to necessarily bombard your public with all of those data points.
Great. And we are getting just several questions asking exactly where the ConPlan Goals and Accomplishments report is in IDIS. So I'll do a quick demonstration here, and then I think we'll have time for a few more questions. But under the Reports tab in IDIS, and again, if you don't have access here to your reports, follow up with your local IDIS administrator. And here this is loading. I'm just going to stay in the IDIS training site here as I'm in through UAT. We'll open this up. And under shared reports, you'll see that one of the reports right here at the top of the screen for me is under the ConPlan Reports and Dashboards. And in opening that up, I am able to export and run the the Con-Plan Goals and Accomplishments report. So that report that Bill was demonstrating and discussing at the very beginning, right here, if you're able to download that from the Reports tab in IDIS. One question that's come in several times is asking, if you start the CAPER too early, are you able to go in and just create a second CAPER and start over? The system is not designed to accept two CAPERs in the same program year. If you need to change a CAPER after it's been submitted and approved, please submit an AAQ, and somebody from the technical office will be able to support you with that. But if you've created your CAPER early in the process and are wanting to then upload it with your accomplishment information, the best practice strategy is to use the Con-Plan Goals and Accomplishments report data and then manually update the CAPER in IDIS. And a couple of questions, and Marlisa, I'd like to turn these over to you. The first question is, if a grantee is working on their CAPER that is due soon, and they are able to complete the eCart for everything except for the domestic violence shelters, will the CAPER be approved, or what steps do they need to take to include that information? How should they communicate that both to the field office and to the SNAP's office?
I would just reiterate that because field offices may have different policies about how they want the CAPER submitted, some may prefer that recipients submit the data that they have and then to follow up later with eCart data that would include data from comparable databases, for example. But other field offices may want to wait for the full eCart submission all at once rather than handling it two different times. So again, I would just encourage everyone to submit or just send an email to me and their CPD rep as soon as possible. I realize that the due date is tomorrow for a number of you. So the sooner you can just get in touch with us, the sooner we can address the due date and then finalize a process for you to submit data.
Great, and I am just going to pull up your contact information again there, Marlisa, so everyone online can take note of your email address. One other question for you. If a grantee did not receive FY 2015 ESG funds, but still has leftover ESG funds from 2014, does the grantee need to use the eCart to report the beneficiaries using the 2014 funds?
Yes. So the eCart requirement is triggered when you're submitting your 2015 CAPER. So for some recipients, you could be spending up to 3 different grants at one time because of the 24-month expenditure period. So even if you did not spend 2015 funds, if you're submitting your 2015 CAPER, you want to submit the eCart. So that's really the parallel. If you're submitting your 2015 CAPER, then start submitting your eCart as well.
Great. Thank you for that. And we do just have a couple of minutes left. I know there's still many questions out there, and I do apologize that we won't be able to get to all of the questions today. But do encourage you, if you do still have any questions at the end of this session, to submit them to the AAQ portal. And if they are related to the ESG CAPER, please select ESG. In step 2, if they're related to the eCon planning suite more generally, please select the eCon planning suite in step 2. I do just want to take the last couple of minutes to show everyone where the resources on the CAPER for the eCon planning suite and for the ESG CAPER are located on the HUD Exchange. So we'll come back to IDIS and we'll just look at two different HUD Exchange pages. The first is for the consolidated plan, and you will note there's a number of featured resources here. The first that I just want to talk about is the comp plan in IDIS Desk Guide. For those of you who've been asking about, is there a template or a sample CAPER that you can use or look at? The consolidated plan in IDIS Desk Guide walks through each screen and each question of the comp plan, the action plan, and the CAPER. So if you're looking for what the information that you'll be needing to discuss and needing to report on is, you can review that in the desk guide. The second piece is the troubleshooting guide. Again, I mentioned that there are a few issues with the CAPER download when you download it as a Word document, and those are described here in the troubleshooting guide. This is something that HUD keeps current, and as issues are identified, HUD is providing workarounds and strategies to make sure that you're able to fully use the system. And then finally, mention that there was an e-tutorial video describing the comp plan goals and accomplishments report, and that e-tutorial is housed here under the eCon Planning Suite e-tutorials. There's a number of different tutorials on different elements of the eCon Planning Suite, and you can view each of these videos. They're ranging anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes on the different elements of the eCon Planning Suite, one of which focuses on the CAPER and the CAPER MicroStrategy report. And then lastly, under the ESG program, you're able to download and access the eCart annual reporting tool as well as the guide. As Bill said, the guide walks you through step by step of what you need to do to complete and to submit and upload the eCart tool to your CAPER. So with that, thank you all for participating. Thank you all for spending part of your day with us. I hope we were able to answer the questions that you had. If you do have any additional questions, please submit them to the AAQ portal, and we will respond to you as soon as we're able. Thank you again.
Thank you.